It is a series of events dedicated to building community, promoting intellectualism, and supporting Black businesses. And it is just my honor today to be talking with my homeboy Leroy Adams. We're gonna get into like all the good things that he's doing here in San Antonio and around the world, like literally around the world, his business ventures and adventures. But before we do that, I want to let you all know that this platform, Entrepreneurial Appetite, does have a Patreon account, and we are looking for our founding 55 members. And for $5 a month, you can get access to all of our live discussions and early releases of our content. And so let's say you register for an event, one of our live discussions, and you can't make it, you will still get access to that content early. And as we roll into the next season, starting in 2023, we have a lot of bonus content in store for our audience and our listeners and our supporters. Also want to let you know that the funds that we acquire from the Founding 55, which again is $5 a month, will go to help us hire a Black intern or a freelancer to help with the production of the show. And so that fits with our mission to support Black businesses. And so also today, we're offering a special for those of you who sign up today. You will also get 50% off the annual subscription for the Buddy Fast Travel magazine, which I believe would be $25 for the year.
Yeah.
So that's a really good deal. And so basically, we're going to cover half the cost of the subscription to the magazine. And so again, that aligns with our mission to support Black businesses and build community. And so you can use the QR code here on the screen. And I'll also, as like we go through the show, I'll type in the link so you can go there and do that if you don't have the opportunity to do it now. So I also want to make you all aware that part of our mission is to support Black businesses, but I think about that broadly. So when I think about a Black business, I think about a Black institution. And so I'm a graduate of North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University, which is my HBCU. You see I'm repping the HBCU grad shirt today. And so I've started an endowment with two of my friends who also started A&T, but were able to matriculate and get their PhDs in some educational fields. So my homeboy Terrell Morton, who recently got a job at the University of Illinois, Chicago, is a STEM education professor. My homegirl Brittany Patrick is literally about to graduate with her doctorate from the University of Maryland College Park in special education. And so we started this endowment called the From A&T to PhD Endowed Scholarship to give back to our institution that has done so much for us. So when you give to Entrepreneurial Appetite, when you make the donations to join our live discussions, or when you join our Founding 55, we are taking that money, those resources, and investing it back into our own businesses, but we're also investing in our community. And I also want to add that I got two homeboys who are part of my academic family. They're my brothers, even like beyond work. They just, I will call them my other brothers, not biological, but they're like family to me. Dr. Alvin Logan, Dr. Brandon Crooms, who we all three of us teach a class called African Americans in Sport. And so during COVID, we decided to collaborate and turn our class into a podcast, which we call a pod class. And so our audience is able to get the content that we share with our students about the broad and diverse experiences of African Americans in sport. And check that podcast out as well. We have some really dope conversations with folks who are in the business of sport, but not just playing on the field. So we have scholars, we have people who work in higher ed, we have people who work in all different arenas, pardon the pun, right? All different arenas of sport. And so we want to share that content with you all. And so your support is wanted there just by listening. So I'm gonna fix the camera here just a little bit so y'all can get a better view. And so without further ado, I want to introduce you all to my homeboy Leroy Adams. And so I don't know if I've ever told Leroy this. I don't know if I ever told you this, but I wouldn't have this podcast.
Stop.
No, it's facts. It's facts.
You were doing this before I
Right. I was doing the conversations and discussions in person.
Yeah.
But the transition into becoming a podcast is literally because of this brother. And so all the things that I learned, like where do I go to put my podcast on Apple Podcasts? Like where do I host this thing? How do I edit it? How do I get things done? I got all this information from this brother because he started the Buddy Pass podcast before he even started his Buddy Pass magazine. So we're going to get into that today. But Leroy, I just want to start with you giving us some insights into how and why you started the Buddy Pass travel brand, the magazine, the podcast,
Yeah,
the whole thing.
So when I was a junior in college, so I went to University of Houston downtown. And when I was a junior in college, I had this idea, I had this ambition to sort of go abroad. Don't really know where it came from, to be honest with you. Perhaps it came from, seeing my sister who works in politics, and she would travel for work to different countries, mostly African countries. And so I'm walking through the hallways one day at school, and I see this poster, this flyer for a study abroad trip to Taiwan. And it was attached to a creative writing course. And I love writing, love creative writing. And so I said, you know what, man, I'm gonna sign up for that. I think that'd be cool. And I signed up for the course and went through that semester and got to the end of the semester when the trip was supposed to take place. And this ties into also, why we decided to add on a scholarship component to the magazine. I get to the end of the semester and I walk into my professor's office and I hand him what I think is my last $1,000 payment for my trip. And he looks me dead in my eyes and he's like, okay, all you got is $1,000 left to pay. And I was just devastated because I thought that I had made all of the payments necessary to go on this trip. So I walk out of the class, his office, and I'm crying, boohoo crying, because I wanted to go on this experience. I've gone through 3 months of this class just to go on this trip. I was crying internally, externally, bro. The tears were flowing. And so I get on the phone, and I call my mom, who, by the way, was not excited about me wanting to travel abroad. So I get on the phone and I call her, and in true Black mom fashion, she puts aside all of her feelings and biases in terms of me traveling abroad. And it's like, we're going to get on the phone. We're going to call your grandma. We're going to call your auntie. We're going to call everybody and we'll raise this money. I'm like, no, don't worry about it, mom. I'll figure it out. So, I double down on my jobs, cut back on some spending, and eventually raise the money, go to Taiwan, and had the best experience of my life, right? Being around Taiwanese people who, for many of them, had their first time seeing a Black person, and like how I responded to that. And it was very cordial. It was very kind. It was very like, we just want to get to know you. And so once I got back to the States, I finished my last year of school. And instead of going to law school like I wanted to, I joined the Peace Corps. Yeah. And went to Ethiopia for the Peace Corps, had another great experience. But what I saw there was there were so few Black people in the Peace Corps, at least within my cohort. Going to Ethiopia. So there was 70, newly graduates, if you will, in our cohort. Out of the 70, 7 of those people were Black, myself included. And then, fast forward a year after I finished my Peace Corps experience, I end up in Beijing. And the Black community in Beijing was insane. Black people from European countries, Black people from the States, Black people from African countries, Black people from Caribbean, West Indian countries. It was insane. And what I realized was, man, we're out here. And it wasn't just that we were just in Beijing, but Black people own businesses in Beijing, barbershops, salons, restaurants, catering businesses. Black people were going to school in Beijing, getting masters, PhDs. I, myself, and a partner of mine started a creative brand called BLK GEN to organize events throughout Beijing and Shanghai to sort of express and create a platform to where we can share our Black heritage to disrupt and challenge some of those negative ideas that the Chinese community had there. And so I'm sharing all of this. I'm sharing Taiwan with folks back home. I'm sharing Ethiopia with folks back home. I'm sharing China with folks back home. And I'm like, yo, Black people out here, no one believed me. So I'm like, damn, how do I fix this? So I started a podcast where I would go around, I would travel Mexico, Switzerland, Ireland, and interview Black people that lived in these countries. A couple, months ago, I was in Switzerland where I interviewed a sister who works for the World Economic Forum, but she's also sort of a digital freelancer out there. And she's been living in Switzerland for 3 years. So in order to show people right? People respond to what they see. In order to show people that, I started the podcast. After season 1 of the podcast, people kept coming and said, man, we need resources. Like, how do I move abroad?
Yeah.
How do I travel? How do I get a passport? So I said, okay, we'll create a travel guide. And that travel guide slowly evolved into a travel magazine. Because if you look at the travel industry, it does a poor job of tailoring its advertisements, its services, its products to the Black community, despite the fact that we spend insane amounts of money on travel, right? And so I recognized that the reason I started the Buddy Pass brand was, one, to raise awareness on what Black people were doing abroad, particularly for our community, to show people like, yo, we are out here and you can be out here too. And the second part of it was, oh, there's a lot of economic and business opportunities in the Black travel space, right? If we're spending billions of dollars annually traveling, why does that go to only, white-owned businesses or institutions, as you describe them? Why are we not also, gaining access to this economy that's essentially growing and evolving, because more of us are entering into this travel plus outdoor space. So, the vision behind the Buddy Pass in terms of why I started was, one, just to help more Black people gain access to the travel community by providing resources, by providing stories about people that come from their communities that are doing these things so that they can relate to them, right? And then the second part was, okay, this is a business, start a business, and you be the one to provide the services and the products to your people instead of someone else doing it.
I want to mention, I want to say this. I'm going to make a comment. I want you to respond. Maybe about a year ago, I partnered with you and your former partner with the Buddy Pass to do an interview with Martinique Lewis.
Yeah.
And Martinique Lewis wrote a book called the ABC Travel Guide. It's like a green book for traveling abroad for Black people. And one of the things Martinique talked about was how certain parts of Africa, the ABC Travel Guide was designed for Black folks from the States and maybe around the world to be able to go to Africa and say, I'm going to support this Black business.
Yeah.
There were parts of the continent where Martinique said they don't have businesses. There's Chinese businesses there. But when you went to China, you saw Black folks starting businesses.
Yeah.
I want you to talk about, can you talk about that juxtaposition? Because I think sometimes we operate, and I've said this numerous times on the podcast, in this box of Black orthodoxy, where we like say, man, Chinese government runs Africa. But what's to stop us from going over there and starting our own businesses? So talk a little bit more about those Black entrepreneurs in China who were speaking a language that it wasn't a Romance language, it wasn't a European language, it wasn't a language we were colonized by. How were they going over there and getting it?
Yeah. It's funny you sort of mentioned that juxtaposition of, the Chinese government and Chinese people are in African countries owning businesses, starting institutions. We are also over there doing the same thing. And the reason I mentioned that's funny you asked me that is because I wrote an article for a Chinese publication about 4 years ago. The title was, What is it like to be Black in China? And the argument that I was making in the article, in the op-ed, which the Chinese government eventually took down because I was very critical, because a lot of the propaganda that was coming out of China at the time was about how poor African countries are, how poor African people are, right? Comparing African people to wild animals. And my argument was, you all are looking at this relationship one-sided. There are African people coming here, starting businesses, going to school, contributing to your local economy, contributing to your culture. This isn't a one-sided relationship. This is a mutually beneficial relationship, right? They're gaining, obviously, clearly on a grander stage, the Chinese government, the Chinese community is probably gaining more from this relationship, but African people in African countries are also gaining from what they're doing in the Chinese, in China. And so in terms of how Black people have been able to like go there and navigate the Chinese community to start and create businesses, it's really not that difficult. China's one of those countries where on the outside, it looks very much controlled. And from a social standpoint, it is a communist state. But from an economic standpoint, it is very much entrepreneurial and liberal. If you have an idea, if you have ambition, whether or not your Chinese is strong, you can go there and start a business from the ground up and be successful. There are friends that I, met over there that are still there now that are running their businesses. Some of them I featured in the first issue of the magazine. Some of them will feature in several other issues. But it wasn't a lot of red tape, and there wasn't a lot of walls that you had to like break through, right? So what you often saw was people that were just ambitious, that had ideas, and that would start their businesses first within the ecosystem of the Black community, and then allow that to grow out by partnering with local Chinese businesses, other, Chinese entrepreneurs, some of them who had been educated in the West, so spoke English very well, were familiar with how Western business practices were compared to Eastern business practices. So it really just took a lot of ambition, curiosity, and effort to just get something started and then allow it to grow.
There's another point that you made that was interesting to me. And we spoke about this at the coffee shop two or 3 weeks ago. And Black people are very diverse.
Yeah.
We're not the same. And I think sometimes we understate the impact of our generational diversity. And so there's a theme within the American Black narrative that we built this country, we put all the effort and
so why lead?
This, we deserve everything.
So why lead? Yeah.
So why lead?
Yeah.
And so what is the message to you for folks who maybe generationally see America as it?
Sure.
But maybe don't see the world as it.
Yeah.
We see the opportunity here, or maybe we don't see the opportunity here. Maybe it's this is the best we can do. America gives us the best we can. Talk about the global opportunities that you've seen in China and Africa and the other places that you've gone. Seeing Black folk just out here.
It's so that is a very established idea amongst the older Black community, if you will, respected older Black community, right? One can understand why on some level they would be fearful of abandoning or leaving what we've built here because we've built it. They were part of the generations that put in the blood and the sweat and the tears and all of that, right, to build what we can do now right in front of us, right? But also a part of that is a fear of the rest of the world, right? Because you're talking about a generation that grew up during the Cold War. You're talking about generation, right? You're talking about generations that grew up during the Vietnam War. You're talking about generations who grew up during a time where literally the world was essentially like countries attacking America, right? And so having to hide under their desk when they were in school. And I often talk to that generation about that and how that sort of influences their idea of going abroad. Now I'll say that, but I'll also mention there were Black folk, mostly celebrities though, mostly thought leaders, mostly political activists who did travel during that time. You're talking about the Malcolm X's, right, who took his trip to Mecca. You're talking about a James Baldwin who went to France, but also went to Switzerland. You're talking about a Maya Angelou who was in Egypt and ran a newspaper out there, who was also in Ghana. You're talking about members of the Black Panther Party who went to Beijing. So you're talking about Black celebrities and political activists who do have stamps in their passport, but that wasn't the masses. Now we're part of a generation where the masses, we're not celebrities, we're not political activists, but we can get on this plane and go where we want to go, right? So I can understand why the older generation may have that sort of attitude towards being a Black expat and a part of, other parts of the world. But now you have our generation who we're looking at, and the George Floyd protest was a big part of like the Black tribal movement. We all saw Brother Floyd, we all saw Sister Breonna, we all saw Sister Arbery and countless others still, right, deal with police brutality and untimely deaths. And so we're asking ourselves, wait a minute, I can go to Spain and build a beautiful life and not have to worry about police brutality. I interviewed a brother on the first season of my podcast who was from Philly. Got offered $70,000, a $70,000 raise by his company in the States. He turned it down I said, bro, $70,000 or you,
A lot of money.
brother, and he said his words, why would I take that 70,000 when I'm also potentially risking my life? That $70,000 is not going to protect me from police brutality. But in Spain, I don't have to deal with that. In China, in Thailand, in Korea, we don't have to deal with, sure, there is a level of Black discrimination or anti-Blackness in all places. Like it's there, but it's not as physical or destructive as it is in the States. Yeah. So a lot of us in our generation, we're like, man, listen, I can go to Bali and set up shop. I just talked to a sister who lives in Bali, and she just launched her own clothing line. So the message that I often give to the older generation, the message that I gave to my mom, them, it's like, listen, the world is everywhere is dangerous. You take risks when you walk out the door, especially as Black people in the States. But a lot of us, when we go abroad, we feel so much more safe. We feel like our Blackness is not always on display, especially in Black countries. In Ethiopia, I forgot that I was Black. It wasn't a thing. I wasn't reminded of it every day. So a lot of us are looking at the situation here in the States where it's like rampant student loan debt, police brutality, anti-Blackness. Why? Why deal with that when we can go here and live in a paradise or raise a family in a country where we're accepted and treated well and treated with dignity?
Yeah. You didn't mention this earlier, but it's related to your college experience. Talk about basketball scholarship. Yeah. Leaving the basketball team. Brothers who play sports have high athletic identities. Yeah. I in some ways, this is part of the research I do in my scholarship. I believe that sports brainwashes Black men. Not everybody, but it does something to it, right?
I follow.
And so what did it mean for your identity to change when you went to Ethiopia? Because you was like, I forgot I was Black. Yeah. But I think that was a different forgetting you were Black than Herschel Walker forgetting you were Black. You know what I mean? Than the narrative about Michael Jordan, he transcended Blackness, right? I think that's a different experience. So talk about what it did for you to go from being student athlete to world traveler.
It added, being a world traveler adds complexity to your Blackness. You know, again, particularly in Ethiopia, as I mentioned, I forgot that I was Black, right? But at times I was reminded that I was Black. You know, when folks were, hey, you don't walk like a Black American. I'm like, well, what does a Black American walk like, right? And they pretend to walk with their pants hanging off their butt. And I'm like, we don't walk like that. And I'm like, where did you get that from? And they point at the TV and they say, oh, Lil Wayne. I'm like, oh, man, that's all y'all see. Like, that's all of y'all are receiving from, right? From the Western world in terms of Black identity. Yeah. And so being a world traveler added that complexity and added layers to my Blackness, where in the States at that time, I was just considered a student athlete. And on some level, I only saw myself as that. And when that didn't pan out, right, when the NBA didn't pan out, then it's like, then what am I, right? What else do I aspire to? And this is why, for me, the study abroad trip was profound, because I went through that experience. And that experience allowed me to add, world traveler to my identity, because I saw that I can do this. I can travel the world. I can be safe in the world. I can find a home in the world and other countries around the world. So just being a world traveler allowed me to add that sort of layer of complexity in terms of who I am, what I'm able to do. And it wasn't limited by my Blackness, right? Things that we're able to do often, right? Sometimes in the States, we're told certain things that we can do, certain circles we can operate it in. And a lot of that has to do with our Blackness. Yeah. In the greater world, I didn't feel restricted by my Blackness. On some level, it helped elevate me to certain spaces because people were curious about Black people, particularly Black Americans. Like, oh, wow, what do you do? What do you like to do? Where are you from? Like, all of these questions, very few of them had anything to do directly with my Blackness. But of course, there was an undertone of like, well, you're this Black person I've never met. Like, I'm curious about you. So going from a student athlete to a world traveler just really broadened my perspective of my potentiality. Like, what can I do? What can I create in this world? You know, and obviously you see the fruits of that, but just taking that leap allowed me to say, oh, I can do greater. I can be greater. I am greater.
Yeah.
You know?
It's good. So I just want to remind the audience that for those of you who are logging on now, that Entrepreneurial Appetite, we do have a Patreon where you can support the show. We have a special called the Founding 55, where for $5 a month, you can get access to all of our live discussions and also some bonus content. And if you miss the live discussion, you get early access to the recordings. And so Leroy here, who is the founder of the Buddy Pass Travel Magazine and other brands, podcasts, we're going to get into the vending machines in a moment, has offered those of you who register today, in addition to getting access to this content from Entrepreneurial Appetite, you'll get a 50% discount on joining. You'll get a 50% discount subscription to the magazine, which was $25 a month. And so I just typed that in the chat, a link to the Patreon for Entrepreneurial Appetite. And this money goes to support what we do, goes to support what Leroy does. We're looking to hire a Black intern to give some college student a great experience. And so also want to encourage all of you to, if you have questions, man, you can type it in the Q&A, you can type it in the chat. I want to give a shout out to Ada, who has a question about how would you advise someone how to start traveling for little money? Like, what's the first step if you got a limited budget?
Yeah.
Like, how do you do it?
Yeah. Plan in advance. And I know that's so cliche, right? I know that's so cliche, but myself and any other traveler will tell you, plan in advance. If you have to plan a year out, do that. One of the things I've seen a lot of travelers do, let's say you want to take a trip in December and your ticket is about, your ticket up into November is like $300. So that means you break that down from August to November. How much do you have to make from that day, right? So it doesn't feel like a big chunk of money. Oh man, $300. No. Break that down over what, 60, 90 days. So that means each day, how much do you have to make then, right? So I tell a lot of people, just plan in advance. And another thing most travelers will tell you, chase deals, not destinations, right? There's always cheap flights to Mexico, to Canada, to Bali, to European. They're always out there. I love the Hopper app. I love Skyscanner, Google Flights. There's a ton of cheap airline apps out there. Chase deals, not destinations. And then you will see that you're racking up countries, right? Jessica Nabongo, the first Black woman to visit every country in the world. I was talking with her a couple of weeks ago, and she says the same thing. We're like, yo, how did you visit every country in the world? How do you do that? She said, chase deals, not destinations. And a lot of those deals are like $100, $150, $200. And again, if you plan in advance, you can knock that out. Last year, I hit like 7 countries. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? But I planned that out in advance, and I didn't try to crunch that all at last minute. And a lot of times, if you find that you have a cheap ticket, right, chase the deal, not the destination, you can lock that in by saving it, right? Through Google Flights, or through a Skyscanner, through a Hopper. So that's the one big key of advice I would tell anyone is, obviously, make sure you got your passport. A lot of us still need to get passports, but chase the deal, not the destination, and also plan in advance. Don't wait last minute.
I think, though, you made a good point about the passport, right?
Yeah.
More Black folk need to get passports.
Yo, that's big for me. Yeah. Like, so you mentioned the magazine. So we do the Buddy Pass Travel Magazine. One of the reasons why we're publishing this is to raise money to fund study abroad scholarships for Black college kids, right? I shared my story earlier of how I was devastated that I could not afford to go to Taiwan, and I had to raise that money myself. I know that there are a lot of Black kids, Black college kids, that want to study abroad, but two things happen. One, they don't see people that look like them travel. Two, these price tags for these study abroad trips are insane. Yeah. So in order to address that, we're working with HBCUs, one, to publish this magazine so that they can share this with their kids, and their kids can see people that look like them in a travel magazine in places like Spain or Thailand or Bali or Mexico, living their best life, right? And then two, raising money so that we can help fund scholarships for our kids to take those study abroad trips. If I don't study abroad, I don't become an entrepreneur, period. If I don't study abroad, I don't, get into real estate. I don't launch this travel brand. I don't launch this podcast. I don't do a lot of things that I'm doing right now if I don't study abroad.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So that's one reason why I hop on the passport. But also, there was a time where Black people could not get a passport in this country because we were not considered citizens.
Yeah.
A lot of us don't know that. A lot of people don't know that. A lot of people don't know that's why they don't have passports. And that's why they don't travel. Because your parents, your grandparents, your great-grandparents, your great-great-great-grandparents were not able to get a passport because they were Black in America.
Plantation state.
Exactly. Right?
So wait a minute.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like that.
You went up north.
You could not.
South, you went up north.
You could not get a passport.
It
was illegal for you to leave. 1859, Black abolitionist William Brown, who was a part of the Peace Congress delegation to Paris, applied for a passport. Sent a letter, because at the time to apply for a passport, you had to write a letter to the Secretary of State, who was John Clayton at the time. Wrote a letter to Secretary John Clayton asking for a passport. He said, I am a citizen of Kentucky and I am a colored person. The Secretary of State did not respond to him, effectively rejecting his application and not knowing, also denying his citizenship. Because at that time, only white people, because they were considered citizens, were able to get a passport. So he didn't realize, Secretary John Clayton at the time did not realize that you were effectively bringing up the conversation about Black citizenship, because at the time, the conversation around Black citizenship was not settled. So in denying Brother Brown's application for a passport, he was also bringing up that, so you have political activists and abolitionists hop on that and say, wait a minute, we were born here. We were free, we're freed here, and we still can't get a passport. You had a lot of white folk at the time, political leaders, who said, there is no way we can allow Black people, free Black people, there's no way we can allow them to go abroad, because it challenges everything that the American society stood for at the time. If you have a Black person traveling abroad who's intellectual, who's ambitious, like a Brother Brown, what does that say about the institution of slavery in America? It completely shatters the idea that Black people are lazy, or Black people are not intelligent, or Black people can't, right, self-regulate them. It completely shatters that idea, right? And then you also have them Black folk who are going abroad, challenging American society. We can't have that. We cannot have that. So something that we were essentially kept from, that we could not, we should have that. You don't know what's going to happen in this country, right? It's like you one day your family may want to move abroad. That's right? Go and get that passport. You had a lot of Black folk, Black and brown people, who said, I'm going to head to Canada when Trump was elected. They're like, I'm not vibing with this right now. George Floyd protests. A lot of us left. You never know what can happen here. And you may say, man, you know, for a couple of years, I just want to be out.
I think we aren't aware of we had a conversation about generations. And I think even before the generation of our parents, maybe even those in the generation of our parents, man, those people were global. Malcolm X had an office at the UN. Martin Luther King was traveling the world.
He went to India.
He didn't get that Nobel Peace Prize
to study nonviolent protests.
In the States.
But when he went to India, the U.S. Embassy in India failed to provide him protection. I'm sorry, when he went to collect his Nobel Peace Prize, the U.S. Embassy there said, we're not giving him protection. What? It's you know, so those are the sort of things that, even though they still had access and opportunity, they were still dealing with racism from our own American institutions abroad, right? But they were still going. They were still going because it was important to challenge the idea of American racism, anti-Blackness at the time. Malcolm X said it best. The Black issue is not a civil rights issue. It is a human rights issue. And it's a human rights issue because it makes it a global issue, right? We need global allies. So Malcolm X is like, yo, we need to get out there. That's why you saw Maya going to Ghana. That's why you saw MLK going to India. That's why you saw some of us going to the Eastern world, to China, for allies, because we realized we needed global allies to fight American racism.
Now, you know what's interesting? During my doctoral studies, I have to give a shout out to Dr. Anthony Brown, because he would always tell us, he's the one that introduced this article, and I forget the author's name, about how Brown versus Board of Education and integration, legalized integration, was a Cold War imperative. And it wasn't about the constitutional rights or freedom of Black folk. It was that there was a narrative against America saying that you're saying you're for freedom and democracy.
Yeah.
And y'all trying to get on these communist states about their oppression and you know, not having free markets, but look at the way you treat Black people.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Malcolm X being a global Black person, Martin Luther King being a global Black person, Maya Angelou being a global Black person, Josephine Baker being a global Black person. All of that is part of why we were able to get policy changes here in the United States. I would also add, and we're going to get into this book that you got over here in a little bit. I'm reading a book right now called Fugitive Pedagogy by Jarvis Gibbons, who's a professor at Harvard University. And it tells some of the story of Carter G. Woodson. Carter G. Woodson, stories like yours. He wasn't part of the Peace Corps, but when America got control of the Philippines, I just got through chapter 1. So I actually read this today. When America got control of the Philippines from Spain, there was a very small amount of Black folk who went over there to teach. And Carter G. Woodson
was one of them. Yeah.
Crazy. And he spoke Spanish, he spoke German, French, and English. The
history is there. Like the black travel history is there. And that's some of the, you know, we bring that up, and we have articles and content around that in the magazine as well, because I think it's important to also talk about where we've been. Right. And again, those who have been, right, the Malcolms, the, you know, just, they weren't a part of the masses in a sense, right? But there is a history of global Black travel. You're not going to read it in the history books, right? They're not. You often find Black people are not allowed to have Black people in America are not allowed to have a global identity, right? Because with the global identity, again, becomes allyship, comes economic and business opportunities around the world. That, you know, this idea that it's so difficult to go abroad and start a business, it's certainly not. I've met so many of us, people that are doing it already. But again, the mindset, the perspective of like, oh, I can be out there has not yet permeated the Black masses, because a lot of us didn't grow up like reading and learning about, oh, Malcolm went abroad, MLK went abroad, and Maya Angelou went abroad. Like that history is there.
You know, Jackie Robinson's son left the United States, lives in Africa, and has a coffee co-op.
Yeah, man, we're there, and it's so cool. It is so dope to see young Black millennials and, you know, Gen Zers who are like starting up businesses in other parts of the world.
You said something profound. You said Black folks in the United States are not permitted to have a global identity. And I think about how that has limited us from being able to participate in the business of globalization. So from an economic
despite the fact that it's our culture that drives global, right? That's one of the drivers of globalization. Like when I got off a plane in Addis Ababa, capital of Ethiopia, you know, I was still young and abroad, if you will. When I got off a plane, one of the things that threw me, and now I look back on, I'm like, bro, why were you tripping about that? Like, why was that surprise you? But one of the things that threw me was to get off the plane and see a young Ethiopian rocking Jordans.
Wow.
I was like, because I still had the mindset of like, oh, wait, sneakers? But Jordans. They have a middle class over there, right? They have wealthy Ethiopian people, right? Rocking J's. Another thing that threw me is like the last week that I was in Beijing, me and a couple homies went to a club celebrating. And it was Tupac night. It was Tupac night at a club in Beijing. Bro, we walked in the club. Imagine seeing a club full of Chinese people dressed like Tupac. Dude, like bandanas wrapped around their head, you know, nose ring,
the whole thing.
Whole baggy clothes, the whole thing. Tupac night. So it's our culture that is like one of the primary drivers of globalization, right? But we're not participating in that global economy.
We're not getting those coins.
Right? But it's our culture. Right? It's our way. It's you go abroad and from a sports perspective, right? All the kids want to learn about LeBron. All the kids want to shoot like Steph.
Yeah.
All the kids want to ball like Kobe. Rest is,
Yeah.
rest is so. It's our culture.
Yeah.
All of them love Beyonce. They got the hair. You walk into any flea market in Beijing and there are hair stores with weaves up and down. Chinese women getting braids, trying to look like Black women. It's our culture, but we're not participating in that global economy.
Yeah.
But this generation, because the masses now has access and the masses are traveling, are changing that.
Talk about some of the individuals in the magazine, the first issue, who are examples of the Black folk who are doing that.
So there's one sister, like everybody loves her story, Deidre. Can I say it? So this sister here, Deidre Dares, she is in Bali. Her story is quite like really dope. She was in corporate America and she was not happy. And this is also something that you find that's sort of consistent amongst the Black travel story in terms of Black people that lead.
Yeah.
She wasn't happy. She was like, I'm just not, my creativity is being stunted. I'm surrounded by others.
White folk?
By white folk. And so she took a trip to Bali.
Yeah.
And it was a paradise. Cost of living is low. Bali is one of those countries where as an entrepreneur is perfect for you because it's so cheap to live. And so she stayed. And she started a company called Black Travel Fest, where she would organize trips for Black people to Bali. That has grown into trips to Greece, trips to Ghana, right? And she's been doing that for like 3 years. Recently caught up with her a couple of weeks ago because she launched a travel clothing line called Freedom Collection. And I was like, I got on the call, Deidre, man, like walk me through it. How did this? She's like, listen, man, like, I was networking. I was going to fabric shops in Bali. I was talking to creators. I was talking to businesses. And I really wanted to create something, a physical product. Yeah. And I felt that I could do it here. So she's one of those people that just is a great example of the Black excellence that has been birthed through the Black travel movement. Yeah. Right. You have the brother Francia, who was also he was a corporate attorney. And he talked about how his creativity and his sexuality as a Black gay man was stunted in white America, white corporate America. So right before the pandemic, he took a trip to South Africa. And because of the pandemic, he got stuck there. But he said it was the best thing that ever happened to him. Because now he's a musical, like he was able to tap into his creativity, his artistry, his music. And he launched an album a couple of months ago. And it's dope. And he's a musician now. He's like, man, like this is, I feel this is me. This is where I'm meant to be. And the last one I'll mention is, one of my like favorites. She has a really dope story, really cool sister out in Korea. Simone grew up in New York, had dreams to be a model entertainer, but recognized that LA and New York, where she's from, those markets were saturated. But then decided to move to Korea because she saw that there were opportunities out there, right? She loves, the Southeast Asia, but she also saw like other people becoming models and entertainers in Korea. She saw, Black men that were running TV shows and production companies in Korea. So she went out to Korea. Now she's a model. Yeah. She's in all sorts of Colgate commercials and product commercials out in Korea, and an entertainer. She's on comedic shows, dance shows, like doing her own thing. And she talked about how, she's dealt with discrimination, right? Not being the right color for certain companies out there, but she's got a lot more opportunities as well. Some that she feels she would not have got in a New York or in a LA. So she's a trailblazer for Black women, for sisters that want to go and take their creative talents in terms of being a model or entertainer or a singer, whatever, that want to take those abroad. She's one of those trailblazers, that's doing that. And so those are the stories that we highlight in the magazine. Those are the stories that we feel are important to show. These are not celebrities. These are not activists. These are not famous people. These are everyday people like us, right? That just have a dream, that just have a passion. And like, man, there's an opportunity in Bali. Let me just get to Bali. There's an opportunity in China or Korea. Let me just get there. and let's see what happens. I can always come back home. Can always come back home. Some of them ain't coming back home, but they living their best life, you know?
So you talk about Deidre, right? And she left corporate America. Started her businesses in Bali. It was. So tell us a little bit about your exit from what I call philanthropic America. Like, how did you go from doing what you were doing to setting up these businesses so that you can independently focus on the buddy pass?
And here in the States? So one of my mentors a couple of weeks ago asked me, bro, when did you become so entrepreneurial? And I was like, when I was in Ethiopia. In Ethiopia, in the Peace Corps, you have like a primary project, right? My primary project was in the education sector. I would help with curriculum development. I would help with teacher training, things like that. But you can also have a secondary project. And my secondary project, because the community wanted it to be, was to build classrooms, right? My classrooms were held outside. I worked in a very small town, village. And so I had to figure out, how do I build these classrooms with no funding, no resources, right? So I put together I essentially became a project manager overnight, right? And we built the classrooms. I worked with local construction companies who donated material. I put out a sort of an international campaign for folks to donate books and things like that. Like, I did that. And I looked back and I was like, oh, wow, I just created a whole international campaign and built classrooms. Like, Oprah did it too, but Oprah's a billionaire, right? So that's my level of thought. I was like, oh shit, like I did what Oprah did, with nothing. You know, what can I do back home then? When I do have resources, right? When I do have a community, when I do know the language, right? I built BLK GEN in Beijing. You mentioned earlier. So BLK GEN was the name of the creative company that we started in Beijing. BLK GEN. So when I first got to Beijing, I was a teacher. And people always are so shocked when I share this story. I'm in class one day, and one of my students, a little Apple was her name, kindergarten, I think it was, licks me. And I'm like, whoa. And she kept licking me. And so I'm like, does she think So I walked out of my class and I called my homie who worked at another school. I'm like, yo, bro, they licking you over at your school? He's like, yeah, man, they licking me. I'm like, what the? He was like, yeah, man, they told them that I was made of chocolate because the kids kept. So I walked in my office with my child. I said, yo, did any of y'all tell Apple, like, did any of y'all tell Apple that I made of chocolate? No, we would never. So I walked back into the classroom and I said, Apple, what bush chocolate? Teacher is not chocolate. I am not chocolate. Don't lick me. Apple keeps licking me. Turns out her parents told her that I was made of chocolate because she kept crying every time she saw me. Again, these are kids who've never seen a Black teacher.
So she felt sorry for you.
Who?
She was made out of chocolate.
Nobody felt sorry for me. Apple was hungry. Apple wanted to lick. Apple wanted to see, is he really made of chocolate? She was upset the next day because the next day, after I found out why she was doing it, I got up, went to the gym like I normally do, worked out, got all sweaty like I normally do, but I did not take a shot. I went right to work, and little Apple came licking, and all she got was salt. And little Apple said, I don't like this taste. I don't like this. So she stopped licking. But I also told her, right, that was an opportunity for me to like educate. Yo, you don't do that. That was a teachable moment. Right. But what I realized, and what my homie realized was, they have a lot of negative ideas of Black people here in Beijing. And so we started BLK GEN to create organized creative events, spoken word, poetry, film, to bring the community together. One, Black people can show their culture and their heritage through a creative lens, but also the local Chinese community. Because to keep it real, we had ideas about the Chinese community that we brought over from the States that were not true. So you had a collection of folks from different countries and nationalities that were expressing their heritage and their culture through a creative lens, giving us all an opportunity to learn each other, right? And so I did that in Beijing. You know, it was successful. We were featured in a couple of magazines. And I'm chilling in a bookshop one day in downtown Beijing, area called Sanlington. And this Black woman walks in the bookshop and she's like, yo, I know you. I had never seen this woman in my life. She's like, yo, I just got off a flight. I just got here from Atlanta. And then on my flight was this magazine, and you all were in the magazine. It was an article about BLK GEN and what you all were doing. And she was like, I read that article and I became so much more secure in my decision to move abroad, because I saw that Black people were here and that it was a lot of us and that we were doing cool things. Right. So I'm taking all of these experiences, all of these things that I've done in Ethiopia and Beijing. And so I come back to the States. I'm like, I can build here. Right. If I did it in countries where I don't know the language, I didn't know the culture, but I had to learn it, I can do it in the States. And so I did that. It took a while, like everything does, but now we're at a place where we do publish a travel magazine for Black people, right? That shares tips and resources of how to do the same things that I've done and that other people are doing. So it was just sort of like a smooth transition. It's like, man, like I'm thirsty. I'm hungry. I like being an entrepreneur. I like creating things. I like using my mind. It's fun. It's challenging. And if I can do it on the other side of the world, best believe I can do it back home.
So I want you to talk about what you've done at home, because it's more than just the magazine and the podcast.
Yeah.
You got like 2 or 3 other things that you're doing.
Yeah.
So talk about what you're doing in real estate, what you're doing in the food industry, and how you've used that as your foundation.
Yeah.
To be able to do what you're doing with the magazine.
No, absolutely right. You need something to fund your passion project, right? While I was, again, a lot of the things that I'm doing now are a result of me going abroad. So when I was abroad, as I was learning about generational wealth, right, money management, investing, all of those things, I would sit back and I would look at folks that have built up generational wealth, and they all do 3 things. They're within the American context. There are 3 things that wealthy people do and successful people do. One of them is real estate. Got to own property. The second is the business, right? The tax benefits, right? The third is operating in the stock market. Those 3 things, if done well and effectively, you will essentially build generational wealth over time. So I said, okay, I got to do those things. So I got back during the pandemic. I was lucky, right? Wasn't out traveling, things like that. Wasn't out, outside and all of that. So I was able to stack up. So bought my first duplex, specifically bought a duplex, right? Live in one side, rent out the other side. Turned my spot into an income generator. So now I'm not just paying a mortgage, but I'm also making money that can help pay down that mortgage much quicker, but also can save a bit on the side, right? Said, okay, how else can we, do this? How else can I operate in the real estate space? Airbnb was blowing up, right? And so connected with a few friends. At the time, I didn't have enough capital to flat out buy a property. So me and a few homies got together, put our money together, group economics, and we went into an Airbnb together. And the way that we did it was we went through a rental arbitrage. So for a lot of people who want to get into the Airbnb space and maybe don't have a lot of money to start up, one of the things you can do is essentially rent out an apartment or a complex and turn that into an Airbnb. Our landlord was cool with it because at the end of the day, he's still getting his rent money. Was on a call yesterday. Another landlord was like, yeah, we're cool with that because they're getting their rent money. So for me, real estate was one of the foundational pillars, if you will, of building up generational wealth, but also allowing me to do the things on the side that I want to do. The second business is the vending business, Buddy Snacks Vending. As I was doing my research about low cost startup businesses, things like that, the vending business is you don't need a lot of capital to start that up. So again, during the pandemic, we were getting those stimulus checks. I took one of those stimulus checks and I started the Buddy Snacks Vending. I took $1,400 stimulus check and made $15K in my first 6 months of that vending business.
Wow.
I turned $1,400 into $15K in 6 months. Now, do I have $15K in the bank? Of course not. Right? Investing, save, right? It's not business operations, things like that. But I turned $1,400 into $15K in 6 months with the vending business. But I also got lucky. I like to be real and transparent with people. I got lucky because I was trying to find a location. I could not find one. And it was during the pandemic. We were still rocky. So a lot of folks weren't operating their businesses and didn't want to take on new business ventures, if you will. So went into my network. Your network is your net worth. One of the, I was in a political group called New Leaders Council here in San Antonio. One of the alumni owns a car wash business here in San Antonio with, at the time, 5 locations. Yo, Nick, I just started as a vending business. I see that y'all have vending machines. If you ever need some services, I'm here. Hits me back the next day. Oh, bro, we just lost our vendor. So I went from 0 machines to 5 in one day. June 5th was the busiest day of my life.
Yeah.
Of the 33 years I've been alive, June 5th, 2021 was the busiest day of my life. I had to close on a duplex. Nick hits me up. It's like, yeah, you could get those out of our 0 to 5 locations in one day. So I had to scrabble, bro, and like get everything situated, sign the docs to close out on my house, get my inventory set up and everything like that. Like it was a scramble for a couple of months, but I got it all set up and things like that, you know? So the real estate, the business, and then at the same time, I've been always putting in $100, $50, whatever I could at the time into my mutual funds or my index funds. At the time I had a brokerage account with TD Ameritrade. Since I've moved it to Vanguard, but I was investing in index funds and mutual funds. So property, real estate, check. Businesses, check. Stock market, check. Now keep adding into those over time, 10, 15, 20 years, allow those to grow and watch as generational wealth builds up. The next step is to protect those assets. Set up a trust fund, set up a will, set up a trust, set up a will to protect those assets should something, happen.
So Ada, who previously asked the question about how do you advise people looking to start traveling on a small budget, get your side hustle.
I think that also get a side hustle as well. So one of the machines that I have is specifically for travel. So whatever profit comes from that machine will go specifically to travel. That's another thing I like about the vending business. If that is not your primary source of income, if your vending business is truly a side hustle and you set up a couple, you could have one machine specifically for the stock market. You could have one machine specifically for your real estate, and you could have one machine specifically for living your best life, travel, because you got to enjoy your life, right? So a side hustle. Also, DoorDash. I've also DoorDashed. And so let's say if I am going to take a trip in, again, as an example, November, and in September, and I know that my ticket is about $300, and I break that down over those 60, 90 days, how many days that is in between, then I know when I go on DoorDash, I need to make this amount of money on that night for DoorDashing. So that also alleviates pressure, because now I know I don't have to drive for 6 and 7 hours. I just need to do 5 deliveries to get me to $25. And then $25 the next day, $25, or the day after, whatever the system you set up. But that's also another side hustle that can just be solely for your travel ambitions, right? So side hustles, set that up. And then, at some point, you probably set up a side hustle while you're traveling, because folks are going to want to know how you do it. You set up a blog, right? Set up a podcast. People will reach out to you. People will pay for your travel advisory services. People hit me up all the time. I don't charge them.
You should.
But people hit me up all the time. I had someone hit me up today, bro, I want to move abroad. How can I do it?
You know what? You should start a Patreon.
Stop giving me things to do. I just told you, I got a million things on my plate. You always give me stuff to do.
You can hire somebody to manage that now. Get you a personal assistant.
I'm working on it.
And then they schedule 30 minutes with you.
I'm working on it.
At a certain tier.
I'm working on it. I'm working on it.
So we got a question from the audience from Michelle. Michelle, thank you for joining us today. And she wants to know about opportunities to teach English abroad. You mentioned that a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
I think you did it in Korea, or you did it in China?
I did it in China, in Beijing. Yeah.
So are those opportunities, do you know if those opportunities still exist? I know, right now we got issues with China, right?
Yeah.
There's supposedly a new Cold War with China.
Sure.
COVID is a thing. So what's the landscape like for people who want to go teach abroad?
So one of the great advantages for Americans, let me just be real about it, is that English is our primary language. And English is the primary language of global business. So countries abroad China, Russia, Thailand, Korea, South Korea, wherever you could think of, right? Spain, they want to learn English. They want their children to learn English so that their children can participate in the global economy. So there are a lot of teaching opportunities. Honestly, it's a quick Google search. What I tell you, pick a country, make a list of 5 countries. If you say your goal is to teach abroad, then choose 5 countries you would like to teach in, and Google teaching jobs or teaching opportunities in said country, and watch what comes up. There are also companies out there that will facilitate teaching opportunities for you. The couple off my head, one is EF Education First. I worked with them in Beijing. They're a great company, one, because they make the visa process so simple. They take care of everything, which is a lot of times the biggest hurdle. Another one is CEET, is another company that facilitates teaching and training jobs abroad. TEFL is another one. Is TEFL is the pronunciation of the word, the acronym. But it stands for TEFL, Teaching English as a Foreign Language Abroad, is another company that also helps you find teaching jobs abroad. Also, you can hit me up, Leroy at thebuddypass.co, not com.co, and ask me, and I'll just shoot you a ton of resources in terms of what companies you could work with and how you can find teaching opportunities abroad. But they are there. If you have a degree, you don't have to have a degree. I want to say that you don't have to have a degree. You do have to have some teaching experience or some experience if you don't have a degree, but you don't always have to have a degree. It depends on the country. But if you have a degree and English is your primary language, you're good. You are good. And in certain countries, you will make insane amounts of money teaching abroad. I knew folks that, from the ATL who had a background in STEM. Because STEM was it's such an important discipline, right? And a subject matter to learn, who were getting $90,000 sign-on bonuses in schools in Beijing to teach. That's a signing bonus. $90,000 sign-on bonus to teach STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, whatever, in Beijing, right? With your accommodation taken care of, right? Everything is taken care of in addition to that. So, and then you talk about oil countries. Oh my gosh, right? The Dubais, the Qatars, the Saudi, the amount of money that you can make teaching English in some of these countries abroad, again, allows you to stack up, come back home. Here's for that student loan debt. Here's for that down payment on that house. Right. Here's that startup capital for that business. You know what I'm saying? People are doing it. I did it. Other people are doing it.
So again, that's not a cheap way to go, abroad. It's a way that will actually pay you to go abroad.
Pay you. Yeah. So if you low, like the sister Ada, who's maybe low on cash, save up a couple $100, right? If this is what you want to do, right? Plan it out 6-9 a year in advance. Save up your money. Look for opportunities. Move abroad, and you'll get a teaching job. Look for the teaching jobs, and you'll be good. The opportunities are there, and you can make so much money doing it.
So I want to get this opportunity for people in the audience. If you have any more questions, you can type it in the chat. Ada, yes, we will be posting on YouTube. I will send out the link to the audience, those people who registered, once I have the video up and whatnot. And I'll just send y'all a link to the YouTube channel and whatnot. And so if y'all have any more questions, you can type them in the chat right now. I'm going to ask Leroy one last question, and that should give you all time to kind of think about a question if you have any. And then we'll go over what we're doing in terms of partnering with the Buddy Pass to give you all access to the magazine subscription at a discounted price. And so, Leroy, because in the past we have functioned like a book club, what books are you reading now? What's currently on your reading list?
I'm currently reading this book called Cash Advertising, but I'm also currently reading this book called Colored Travelers. And it's a really great book. It's about the mobility and the fight for citizenship before the Civil War. And it's basically about Black mobility and it's about the relationship between Black mobility and Black citizenship here in the States. It's written by the sister Elizabeth Pryor. Really dope book. It's really, in terms of the things I was talking about earlier, in terms of, 1859 was the first time a Black person applied for a passport, and, how that process essentially raised the conversation of Black citizenship. That is all there. But it also talks about what did Black mobility look like during the Civil War, you know, and it's sort of, I think it also predates what Victor Hugo Green was doing with his Green Book. In many ways, it was the start of it. So that's what I'm currently reading.
There was a Green Book before the Green Book.
There's a Green Book before the Green Book, you know.
Right.
But it's a really fascinating read, man, because it's something because I never thought about the relationship between Black mobility and citizenship within the U.S. Right, which is why I hop on the passport thing so much, man, because that document is a representation of your citizenship, of our identity.
We need to think about getting passports like our license.
Yeah, basically, and it's like $100, $130. You know what I'm saying? Just to have that document, that passport, that book on you, just in case, you know, you do want to travel abroad one day. So that's the book I'm currently reading. A lot of books lately, man, have been like business related. You know, before that, it was a lot of Black history books, about a lot of books written by Black political activists. And now I'm like, okay, let me explore a different subject matter. So, you know, reading this book, I just read Profit First, which was great. Learning me, you know, teaching me how to like manage my business to generate more profit. One before that was the E-Myth, talking about how you want to work on your business, is not always in your business, right? You don't want to be the one always doing the technical work. You want to be on the outside, being the visionary, moving things, right? Directing things. So it teaches you how to do that. If you're an entrepreneur or business owner, I highly recommend the E-Myth. It is a great book by Michael Gerber, I believe it is. Great book. So I just read those two books, finished up those two, and now I'm diving deep into Colored Travelers, Mobility, and the Fight for Citizenship, because it's also a lot about research. It informs a lot of what we're doing with the magazine, a lot of the content that we're creating through the magazine.
All right. And so I appreciate all of you joining us here today. And again, you can see in the chat, we have a link to the Entrepreneurial Appetite Patreon. And so you can become one of our founding 55 patrons for $5 a month. You get access, to our monthly conversations, bonus content. So before we log off, I want to thank my homeboy Leroy Adams. You can find him on, you're not on Twitter, but you're on LinkedIn, right?
LinkedIn, Leroy Adams, LinkedIn, but we're also the Buddy Pass on LinkedIn, IG, the Buddy Pass magazine on IG, TikTok, the Buddy Pass. The Buddy Pass magazine is also on TikTok. We just got up our TikTok. That's so much fun on TikTok, but we just got that up as well. But then also Facebook, you know, Leroy Adams on Facebook and the Buddy Pass. But and then also just, you know, www.thebuddypass.co. And if you want to reach out to me directly, personally, Leroy@thebuddypass.co. That's the email. For an annual subscription, which we'll be launching here. We'll be doing another full launch here next month. And the last thing I want to say about that is a part of that subscription, some of those proceeds will go towards the study abroad scholarship that we do have set up for the magazine. So we're, again, working with HBCUs and universities to help give more Black kids an opportunity to travel abroad. I know Howard and I know FAMU, both of those universities have built into their strategic plan. They want to see more of their students traveling abroad. They have that built into their strategic plan, but they need help funding these trips for these kids. So a subscription with our magazine, a part of that, you know, you're literally also helping us raise money to give scholarships to Black kids to be able to travel abroad.
We're going to have another,
look at you, dope stuff.
Another future media mogul, Melvin Graham, who is producing a documentary series called Black Business LA. He's going to tell the story of how he started his film production company and how he was able to chronicle the stories of these Black business folks in Los Angeles and the struggles and the triumphs that they're going through in the midst of COVID-19. But then also, like, the population changes in the United States are affecting the way Black businesses are functioning and working. And so he's going to talk about how Black folks are able to, you know, continue to compete in the business realm at the local level in their city. And so I look forward to the conversation with him. And you all can find information about that on our Instagram at Entrepreneurial Appetite. I'm Langston D. Clark on Instagram, and we'll be posting things on our Twitter and, of course, for those of you who joined us today, I'll send an email out with the details for that. So join us next week. I appreciate all of you that were here to join us today. And yeah, so looking forward to future conversations, and thank you all for joining us. All right, y'all. I think we good.
Good.
I think we good. I'm gonna stop the recording. And again, we stopped recording, but Ada, thank you for joining us. Beverly, I always appreciate you supporting and being here. Michelle, thank you for your questions. Victoria, thank you for joining us, and appreciate you all staying all the way through. Hope you all enjoy what we're doing. You know, even if we encourage you to like support on the Patreon, but even if you can't, just tell other folks, invite other folks if you enjoy the conversation.
Yeah.
We want to keep giving you more good content about Black businesses and Black intellectuals and folks who are doing good things in the community. So thank y'all for being here. Appreciate it.